Congratulations on registering for the CFA Institute Investment Foundations program. The topic for this video is getting started, study tips, setup, and study process. So the objective of this video is to give you some tips on how to get set up and study efficiently. Having registered for the CFA Institute Investment Foundations program by now, you should be familiar that the curriculum is set up into 7 modules and 20 chapters. There's 163 learning outcome statements spread throughout the chapters. The exam is 2 hours and there's 120 multiple choice questions. So that's 1 minute per multiple choice question. Speed is a skill, skill gets rewarded. And that the recommendation is that average study time is about 100 hours. And to help you practice in the learning ecosystem, there's 949 practice questions, okay? So the topic of this video is really regarding that 100 hours and how to set yourself up and set up a process that makes those 100 hours most efficient. Okay, this slide is talking about the setup, how you set up yourself and set up your materials so that you can study efficiently. So the first tip that I'm saying is print out the syllabus with all the learning outcome statements and print out the glossary. So again, just a quick reminder that if we go to the CFA Institute webpage under the Programs, Investment Foundations program, you can download the chapters from the curriculum for free even before you register. And here I mentioned that you can see the syllabus for the curriculum details. I recommend that you print it out. And also, very importantly, print out the glossary. Those are 2 important documents that will help you study and review for the exam. So I have the syllabus open here in PDF for the CFA Institute Investment Foundations program. And as I mentioned, I recommend that you print this out and have it in your study space. It just gives you the modules, the 7 modules and the 20 chapters. And then for each of the chapters, they give you the learning outcome statements. All the questions on the exam are based on learning outcome statements. And as you can see on some pages, but not all, there's some space to make some notes. And if we scroll down to the end of the document, it just has a quick reminder on the exam weightings for each of the modules, which we should be familiar with at this point. And then finally, there is 1 page for making notes. So again, what you want to do is you want to have your materials set up in a nice, concise, and efficient format. So the next document I have open is the glossary, and I recommend again that you print this out. Many people tend to underestimate or ignore the glossary, and really, in fact, it's quite an important document because a lot of the, even the CFA exam, and especially for the investment foundations, a lot of the questions are based on definitions. So you need to be very familiar with all the definitions, the glossary, because when you get into the questions, most likely or least likely, quite often it has to do with definitions. So again, you know, if you scroll through, you can see that, as I've mentioned often, that the test is sometimes English language test subject equities or English language test subject bonds, English language test subject accounting. You know, the questions are in English, and so you have to be familiar with the vocabulary. And quite often there's some vocabulary that is new to you because, and that's why you're taking the Investment Foundations program. So it's very important to get up to speed on all the terms, the vocabulary, and the definitions. And the way to do it is to, from time to time, scroll through and read the glossary and make sure that you understand all these terms, definitions, words, vocabulary. Okay, quite important. Okay, so after you've printed out the syllabus with all learning outcome statements and printed out the glossary, the next thing that I recommend for some people is to print out the text chapters if you're not comfortable doing all the reading online. So of course, in the learning ecosystem, there are all the chapters online. You can click through them. Some people still prefer to have paper. And as we know, that curriculum is about 650 pages. So it's a fair bit. The next thing that I recommend in terms of getting your setup ready is that I encourage people to make your own flashcards, because quite often there's a lot of lists that need to be memorized. And so how do you memorize lists? Well, we use, quite often we use these mnemonics, and the definition is any linguistic device, such as a rhyme, a song verse, formula, acronym, or other, which is used to jog the memory. So, for example, in the first chapter, there's a list that says what are the 4 key forces that drive the investment industry, and their competition, technology, globalization, and regulation. So to do that, you might want to make a flashcard. 4 key forces, CTGR, and think of a way of memorizing them. So just a little picture here for you. I used to make my own flashcards when I was doing the CFA exam. I passed level 1 in 2001, level 2 in 2002, and level 3 in 2003. Passed all 3 exams on first attempt. And I've been teaching CFA since maybe 2010 or something like that, several years. So again, I just found these in an old desk drawer. These are an example of my flashcards that I made. I didn't spend a lot of time making notes, copious amount of notes. I find that I do a practice question. When I get it wrong, I'll make a new flashcard. So for example, here this is talking about cash flow from operations. It includes taxes, dividend revenue, and interest payments. I must have got a question wrong. Probably I didn't include the interest payments. So I got a question wrong, I make a flashcard. Okay, so I can't underestimate the importance of the flashcards. Very good for reviewing. And then my final point here in terms of getting your materials organized, I said it may be worth having just one binder where you've printed out the 20 chapter summaries. So I would go into the PDF document, print out just the summary pages, and put all the 20 chapters into one binder of just the summaries. So then you have the binder with the learning outcome statements, and you have a binder with the chapter summaries, and you have a binder with the glossary. That makes it really concise and efficient reference material. Okay, so once you've got yourself all set up with your materials printed out the way that you like it, now we're going to move on to this slide talking about the study process. So for example, if you're starting a new chapter, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to read the learning outcome statements for the chapter, because the exam is based on learning outcome statements, 1 or more. Okay, so everything is driven by the learning outcome statements. Number 2, you're going to read the chapter. And as I said, you may want to start with the summary to get a quick overview, or regardless, you're going to read the chapter. I mentioned here that you don't want to spend too much time making notes. I've seen candidates in the past for exams where they're making so many notes, they're practically recreating the chapter. I don't recommend spending a lot of time making notes. Where I do recommend spending a lot of time is on the practice, okay? And we know that there's the 979 practice questions in the learning ecosystem. So I said, do the questions in the learning ecosystem as you read the chapters. Do not save them later for review. I've seen people that have said, I'm going to do all the reading and then I'm going to start practicing the questions. In my opinion, that's not the best way to do it or most efficient. I recommend that you practice the questions as you go through the readings at the same time. And when you get a question wrong, go to the text, learn from your mistake, and make a flashcard. There's 120 questions on the exam, 120 minutes, 1 minute per question. Speed is a skill. Skill gets rewarded. And so how do we improve on any skill? We need to practice. So the next thing that I'm going to show you after we complete the slide is that in the learning ecosystem, you can reset the category, and so you'll be able to retake the same questions again. And why is that important? Is because I said you're going to do the practice as you're reading through the chapters, but as you get ready for the exam, it might be 3 months later, you can reset the questions and do them again. You'll have forgotten some you'll remember, and if you've forgotten one, that's a very good test to do the question again, okay? And then, of course, it is a process. There is a fair bit of content, 100 hours of studying. As you move forward with the new content, you're going to go back and recycle review areas. So you move forward a bit on new content, move back and review. Move forward on new content, move back on review, and that's the process. One of the things here that I say, complement the curriculum with investigating the real world. You want to read articles, newspaper articles, visit websites, expand your knowledge. So, the objective is to not only pass the exam, but also to learn more about the investment industry. So I always recommend complementing the curriculum with some real world reading. And at the end of the day, it's a learning curve. It's all a function of time. Okay. If you put in the time, I always tell people this is the probability for passing an exam, here's your probability percentage. It gets higher and higher. It's a function of time, okay? So as you put in the more time, you'll increase that learning curve. At some point, it'll start to level out, diminishing marginal returns based on economics, and you'll say, yep, I'm ready to write the exam, okay? So that's the process that I recommend, and you do it again and again for the 20 chapters. Okay, so here I am in the learning ecosystem. I'm on the home page, so you can see that I've set up a target date for when I want to write the exam. And then here it's giving you a little bit of a dashboard. You can see that I've started to do some questions. I did the 28 questions for the industry overview, 86% correct. So again, the lessons are here online if you're comfortable with reading the ebook. As I said, I like to have it in PDF. I still like to have paper copies. And then the most important thing here is the practicing. Okay, so you can see I did completed 28 questions of 28, and I had 86% correct. So if I click on that, and as I mentioned, so I've done my practice. I'm in pretty good shape. But later on, when I want to go back and review, I may want to reset the category. Okay, so it's here in red because it said by clicking confirm reset, your answers, your bookmarks, your notes, your confidence levels associated with this category will all be erased, but you'll be able to retake the same questions again, and this action cannot be reversed, so they really want to make sure. But I'm going to confirm the reset here, and so you can see if I go into practice again, 0 of 28 questions, I can start again and do the questions again. Okay, so don't be afraid to do the questions when you're reading through, and don't be afraid to then reset them to do them again at another later date. You'll be surprised at how much you forget as the weeks and months go by. Okay, so we're just going to finish this video with a practice question. I'm going to show you an example of perhaps getting a question wrong and how you would follow up on that. So this is from chapter 1. The practice question is, an increase in which of the following has reduced trade processing costs in the investment industry? A, regulation, B, globalization, or C, computerization? So when I see these first two, that brings to mind the mnemonic that I made, or the list that the 4 key forces that are driving the investment industry were C for competition, and we had T for technology, and we had G for globalization, and then finally we had the R for regulation, CTGR. Those are the 4 forces. So I may look at this question and say, well, wait a minute, there's global regulation and globalization. 2 are there, but computerization, it's not part of the list. So I might, initially discount that because I've memorized this list of the 4 key forces. I might think to myself, oh, this question is asking about the 4 key forces and what's reduced the trade processing costs. So I might think to myself, well, maybe that's globalization, increased competition. Maybe that has reduced costs. So I may think to myself that the correct answer is B. The correct answer is actually C, computerization. Computerization has reduced trade processing costs in the investment industry. So I just want to show you that's a little bit of the warning. You've got to memorize your lists, but you can't be too rigid, okay? So the mistake that could have been made here is you saw the regulation and globalization that matched up with your 4 key forces. So by seeing a word in there that didn't match up with your list, you thought maybe it shouldn't be included, but in fact it is the right answer. So then, in fact it is here, this is straight from the text, and I'm going to show you, okay, so I got that question wrong. I'm going to learn from my mistakes. Maybe I skipped over in the text too quickly. It didn't pop out at me. I've made a mistake. So what would be the next thing that I would do? I say I'm going to go back to the text and I'm going to look, where did I make that mistake? So one of the reasons why I like using the PDF book is that, so I've got a question wrong. I've skipped over the word computerization for some reason. So I'm going to type in here, I can click on the search, type in computerization, click next, and then it'll pop up. I may even want to highlight it then. Oh, there's my CTGR, Competition, Technology, Globalization, Regulation. Under technology, and computerization in particular, has dramatically decreased trade processing costs and increased trade processing capacity. It has also spurred the development and analysis of innovative types of investment products and vehicles. So I can see that was the practice question from the ecosystem, was talking about computerization. But there's another point here that technology has also spurred the development of innovative types of investment products. So then I might be able to anticipate another question based on that. So again, I would make sure that on my flashcard for the CTGR that I would have also under technology the word computerization, investment products and vehicles. And so I would simmer down more and more sort of key words, not only memorizing the CTGR, but under technology, understanding that there's also computerization that has decreased or reduced trade processing costs and also contributed to new innovative types of investment products and vehicles. So I've learned from my mistake. And that is the conclusion for this video regarding the CFA Institute Investment Foundations program on study tips, how to get set up, and the study process to make yourself efficient. Thank you.